My mother stood at our family's mahogany front door, her face twisted with disgust as she pointed toward the driveway. "You are dead to me, Sarah. Dead. Do not ever come back to this house." Those words shattered my world 3 years ago, when I discovered something that would change everything I thought I knew about my perfect family. What I found hidden in my late father's study wasn't just evidence of betrayal, it was proof that everything my mother had built her reputation on was a lie, and the person she truly despised wasn't me. Before we dive into this family drama that'll make your jaw drop, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you're ready for a story about family betrayal, hidden secrets, and the sweetest revenge karma can deliver, smash that like button and hit subscribe because this gets absolutely wild. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when the truth finally comes out. The nightmare began on a rainy October evening in 2021. I had just finished my shift as a nurse at Seattle General Hospital when my phone buzzed with a text from my younger brother Jake. "Mom's losing it again about the charity gala. She's screaming about how you're embarrassing the family name." This was nothing new. Since I had chosen nursing over law school, my mother Elizabeth had made it clear that I was the disappointment of the family. She was the queen bee of Seattle's elite social circle, president of the Rainier Valley Women's Foundation, and demanded perfection from everyone around her. My father Thomas had passed away 2 years earlier from a heart attack, leaving behind his successful real estate development company and a legacy my mother guarded fiercely. That night, I decided to pick up some of Dad's personal items from his home office that Mom had been asking me to clear out. The family mansion in Queen Anne felt eerily quiet as I climbed the stairs to his study. Mom was at her bridge club and Jake was away at college. Dad's office remained exactly as he left it, mahogany desk leather chair walls, lined with awards and photos from his various charitable endeavors. As I packed his papers into boxes, I accidentally knocked over a heavy legal binder, sending documents cascading across the hardwood floor. That's when I saw it, a letter with the Rainier Valley Women's Foundation letterhead, but the signature at the bottom made my blood run cold. It wasn't my mother's signature, it was my father's. The letter was addressed to a construction company, authorizing payment for work that supposedly supported low-income housing projects. Confused, I gathered more papers. What I found made me sick to my stomach. There were dozens of forged documents bearing my father's signature, all authorizing payments from the foundation's accounts to various companies. But these weren't just random signatures, they were expertly forged, and they all appeared to have been created after my father's death. My hands trembled as I found bank statements showing massive transfers from the foundation's charity accounts to personal accounts belonging to my mother and my older brother Michael. Over $800,000 had been siphoned from donations meant for homeless shelters, food banks, and educational programs for underprivileged children. The most damning piece of evidence was a handwritten note in my mother's elegant script: "M transfer complete. Father's signature software working perfectly. Donors will never suspect. Delete all traces from his computer." E. My perfect family. The pillars of Seattle society were thieves. They had been using my dead father's identity to embezzle money from charities that were supposed to help the most vulnerable people in our community. But the betrayal went deeper than just the money. As I continued reading, I discovered that my mother had been systematically undermining my reputation within the family business and our social circle. There were printed emails between her and Michael discussing how to handle the Sarah problem and ensure she never got too close to the books. One email from Michael to my mother read, "We need to keep Sarah focused on her little nursing career and away from Dad's business affairs. She's too honest for her own good, just like Dad was becoming toward the end. We can't risk her discovering our arrangement." My mother's response was even more chilling. "Don't worry about Sarah. I've been documenting her emotional instability since Thomas died. If she ever becomes a problem, we have plenty of evidence to show she's not mentally competent to handle family affairs." The hospital stress, her isolation, her depression, it all paints a clear picture. They had been planning to paint me as mentally unstable if I ever got too close to the truth. Every criticism about my career choice, every comment about my emotional state, every suggestion that I was struggling since Dad's death, it was all part of a calculated plan to discredit me. The final piece that broke my heart was a legal document showing that they had already begun the process of having me declared incompetent to inherit any portion of Dad's business. They were planning to have me legally removed from his will. As I sat there surrounded by evidence of my family's betrayal, I heard the front door slam. My mother's voice echoed through the house. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" I quickly gathered the most incriminating documents and shoved them into my purse, just as her heels clicked up the staircase. When she appeared in the doorway, her face immediately darkened. "What are you doing going through your father's private papers?" she demanded, her eyes scanning the scattered documents. "Just packing up his personal items like you asked," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She moved closer, her gaze sharp and predatory. "You've been snooping, haven't you? I can see it in your face. You always were too curious for your own good." Before I could respond, she noticed some papers sticking out of my purse. In one swift motion, she grabbed my bag and dumped its contents onto the desk. The bank statements and forged letters scattered across the surface. Her face went white, then twisted with rage. "You little thief! How dare you steal private family documents?" "Mom, I know what you and Michael have been doing. I have proof. Proof of what your own delusions." She was already reaching for her phone. "I'm calling the police. You've broken into my home and stolen important family documents. This is exactly the kind of unstable behavior I've been documenting. These documents prove you've been embezzling from the foundation. Dad's signature on these letters. He's been dead for 2 years." Her laugh was cold and sharp. "Is that what you think? That you've uncovered some conspiracy, Sarah? You're clearly having another breakdown. The stress of your job, your isolation, your inability to maintain relationships, it's all catching up with you." "I'm not crazy, Mom. I know what I saw." "What you saw was a sick woman going through her dead father's papers and creating fantasies to explain why her life is such a failure." She began gathering the documents. "I think it's time we had you evaluated, professionally." That's when I realized she was going to destroy everything. I lunged for the papers, but she was faster. "Security, security!" she screamed into her phone, though no security company would respond to a residential call that quickly. "Mom, please just listen to me." "Get out." Her voice was deadly quiet. "Get out of my house right now." "This is about Dad's money, isn't it? About the foundation?" Her face twisted into something I barely recognized. "Your father was weak. He was going to ruin everything we built because of his guilty conscience. Do you think I was going to let his sudden attack of morality destroy our family's future?" The words hung in the air like a confession. She had just admitted that Dad's death might not have been as natural as we all believed. "You're insane," she continued, "just like he was becoming. And if you ever repeat these delusions to anyone, I'll make sure the whole world knows exactly how unstable you really are. I have 3 years of documentation showing your deteriorating mental health." I backed toward the door as her voice rose to a shriek. "You are dead to me, Sarah. Dead. Do not ever come back to this house." The next morning, I sat in my small Capitol Hill apartment, staring at the copies I had managed to secretly photograph with my phone before Mom discovered me in Dad's office. My hands still shook as I uploaded the images to a secure cloud drive. Even though she had taken the physical documents, I had digital proof of everything. But I knew I couldn't fight this alone. Elizabeth Morrison wasn't just any wealthy socialite. She had connections with judges, prosecutors, and city officials throughout Seattle. Her charity work had made her practically untouchable in the community. I needed someone who understood both the legal system and the charity world. That's when I remembered Amanda Rodriguez, an investigative journalist who had been asking questions about charity fraud in Seattle for the past year. Her articles in the Seattle Times had exposed several smaller organizations for misusing donations. If anyone would believe me and know how to build a case, it would be her. I called the Seattle Times main number and asked to be transferred to Amanda. When she picked up, her voice was crisp and professional. Rodriguez here. Ms. Rodriguez, my name is Sarah Morrison. I have information about charity fraud that I think you'd be very interested in. There was a pause. Morrison, as in Elizabeth Morrison from the Rainier Valley Women's Foundation. She's my mother, and I have proof that she's been embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars from the foundation using my dead father's forged signature. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Amanda said, "Can you meet me today somewhere public but private enough to talk?" We met at a small coffee shop in Fremont, far from the Queen Anne social circles where my mother held court. Amanda was younger than I expected, probably in her early 30s, with sharp eyes and an intense focus that made me feel like she could see right through any lie. I showed her the photos on my phone, explaining how I had discovered the documents and what had happened when my mother caught me. Amanda studied each image carefully, occasionally asking for clarification or making notes. "This is bigger than I thought," she finally said. "I've been investigating the foundation for months, but I could never get close enough to the financial records. Your mother's reputation made her untouchable." "What do you mean you've been investigating?" Amanda pulled out her own phone and showed me a voice recording app. 3 different donors contacted me last year, saying they had concerns about where their money was actually going. Large donors, people who gave $50,000 to $100,000 annually. They started asking questions about specific programs and got very evasive answers from your mother and brother. She played a recording of an elderly man's voice. "I donated $100,000 specifically for the new homeless shelter project on Capitol Hill. But when I drove by the location they gave me, there's nothing there. Just an empty lot that's been empty for 5 years. When I asked Elizabeth about it, she got very defensive and said the project had been delayed due to permit issues. But the city planning department told me no permits were ever filed for that address." "How many donors complained?" "Enough that I started digging. But your mother is smart. She's been careful to keep the stolen amount small relative to the foundation's overall budget. A few $100,000 from a $10 million annual operation doesn't immediately trigger red flags." Amanda showed me bank records she had legally obtained through public information requests. "Look at this pattern. Every time there's a major fundraising event within 2 weeks, there are always these consulting payments to various LLCs. I trace those companies, and they all lead back to shell corporations." "Shell corporations owned by my mother and Michael?" "That's what I suspected, but I couldn't prove it. Your photos change everything." Amanda leaned forward. "But Sarah, you need to understand something. Your mother is going to come after you hard. She's already started, hasn't she?" I told her about the mental health documentation Mom had mentioned and how she had been systematically undermining my credibility for years. "That's classic deflection strategy," Amanda explained. "Make the whistleblower look unreliable before they can expose the truth. But we have an advantage. Your photos are time-stamped and geotagged. They prove you were in your father's office at a specific time. That's evidence that can't be easily dismissed." "What do we do next?" "We need more evidence, and we need allies. I'm going to contact the donors who originally called me and see if they're willing to go on record. You need to think about anyone else in your family or social circle who might have noticed something unusual." That's when I remembered something crucial. Jake, my younger brother. He's been asking me questions about Mom's spending lately. He noticed she bought a new Mercedes and took a month-long trip to Europe last year, but she kept saying money was tight because of Dad's death. "Can you trust him?" "I think so. He's always been the honest one in the family. Mom doesn't involve him in the business stuff because he's still in college." Amanda nodded. "Contact him, but be careful how much you reveal initially. We don't know how far this conspiracy goes." Over the next week, Amanda and I worked together to build our case. She used her journalism contacts to verify the shell company connections, while I carefully approached Jake during one of his weekend visits home. Jake, Can I ask you something weird about Mom and Michael? I said as we sat in his dorm room at the University of Washington. Are you talking about their secret meetings? Because, yeah, I've noticed those. My heart raced. What secret meetings? Every Sunday night, Michael comes over to the house and they disappear into Dad's office for hours. They're always whispering and they stop talking whenever I come near. Last month, I heard Michael say something about adjusting the quarterly numbers, and Mom told him to keep his voice down. Have you seen any papers or documents? Jake hesitated. I wasn't supposed to see this, but last week I went into Dad's office to grab a stapler, and there were all these bank statements spread out on his desk. But they weren't for Dad's business accounts, they were for accounts I'd never seen before. When I asked Mom about it later, she said they were just organizing Dad's estate paperwork. But Sarah, Dad died 2 years ago. Why would they still be organizing paperwork? I felt the pieces clicking together. Jake, I need to tell you something, but you have to promise me you'll keep an open mind. I showed him everything, the photos, Amanda's investigation, the evidence of the forged signatures. Jake's face went through a dozen emotions as he absorbed the information. This explains so much, he said finally. Mom's been acting really paranoid lately. She keeps asking me if you've called me, what we talk about, whether you've asked any questions about family finances. She also told me that you've been having episodes and that I should call her immediately if you start talking about Dad's business. She's been preparing to discredit me. Sarah, there's something else. Jake looked around nervously. Mom hired a private investigator to follow you. I saw the invoice on her desk. They've been documenting your daily routine, who you see, where you go. She's building some kind of file on you. That revelation sent chills down my spine. My own mother was treating me like a criminal target. Amanda's investigation was moving fast. She had convinced 2 major donors to go on record with their concerns, and she had traced the shell companies to bank accounts that showed massive cash withdrawals, always just under the federal reporting requirements. We're ready to publish, Amanda told me during our meeting the following Friday. But I want to give your mother a chance to respond. It's standard journalistic practice. She'll deny everything and try to destroy us both. Probably. But her response will be part of the story. Sometimes the cover-up is more damning than the original crime. Amanda scheduled a formal interview with my mother under the pretense of doing a positive feature story about the foundation's charitable work. Mom agreed immediately. She loved media attention and never passed up an opportunity to enhance her public image. The interview was set for the following Tuesday at the foundation's downtown Seattle offices. Amanda planned to start with softball questions about the foundation's mission and accomplishments, then gradually shift to questions about financial transparency and specific program outcomes. Monday night, Jake called me in a panic. Sarah, something bad is happening. Mom just called Michael and they're both coming over tonight for an emergency meeting. She sounded really stressed and kept talking about handling the journalist situation before it gets out of control. Can you hear what they're saying? I'm going to try. But Sarah, I'm scared. Mom's been acting really strange. Yesterday I caught her shredding documents in Dad's office, and when I asked her about it, she told me it was just old tax paperwork. But I saw letterheads from the foundation mixed in with the shredded papers. That night, Jake hid in the hallway outside Dad's office and recorded their conversation on his phone. What he captured was pure gold. Michael's voice came through clearly. The Rodriguez woman has been asking too many specific questions. She knows about the evergreen consulting payments. How is that possible? Mom's voice was sharp with panic. Someone gave her information, someone who had access to the internal documents. Sarah, that little brat must have stolen papers when she was snooping around Thomas's office. What do? We can't make $800,000 reappear overnight. We don't need to make it reappear. We need to make sure no one believes whatever story Sarah is telling. There was a long pause, then Mom continued. I've been building a case for Sarah's mental instability for 3 years. Hospital records show she's been under stress. Her colleagues have noticed behavioral changes, her isolation since Thomas died. It's a clear pattern of psychological decline. But what if she has actual documents? Documents can be forged, especially by someone experiencing a psychotic break. Dr. Harrison has already agreed to provide a professional assessment of Sarah's mental state. He owes me favors from the Foundation's donations to his clinic. The recording confirmed our worst fears. Not only were they planning to destroy evidence, they had corrupted a medical professional to provide false testimony about my mental health. Amanda listened to Jake's recording with growing excitement. This is perfect. They've just confessed to the crime and admitted to a conspiracy to cover it up. Plus, they've implicated a doctor in potential medical fraud. What happens next? Tomorrow's interview just became much more interesting. I'm going to confront your mother with everything we have and watch her try to explain it away. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of gray Seattle drizzle that seemed to match my mood. Amanda and I met for coffee before her scheduled interview with my mother, going over our strategy one final time. Remember, I'll start recording the moment I enter the Foundation offices, Amanda said, checking her hidden recording equipment. Your mother agreed to be recorded for the article, so everything will be legal and admissible. What if she refuses to answer questions once you start pressing her? Then her refusal becomes part of the story. Sometimes silence is more damning than denials. I positioned myself in a coffee shop across the street from the Foundation offices where I could see Amanda enter the building. My phone was charged and ready to record anything Jake might discover, and I had backup copies of all our evidence stored in 3 different cloud accounts. At exactly 10 o'clock, Amanda texted me, "Going in." For 30 minutes, I sat on edge, watching the Foundation's sleek glass building and imagining the conversation happening on the 15th floor. Then my phone exploded with notifications. First, a text from Jake. Emergency meeting called at house. Mom, Michael, and 2 men in suits just arrived. They're panicking about something. Then Amanda called, her voice urgent. Sarah, we have a problem. Your mother just walked out of the interview the moment I started asking about financial transparency. But before she left, she said something that chilled me to the bone. What did she say? She looked me straight in the eye and said, Ms. Rodriguez, I hope you've done your research on Sarah's mental health history, because that's going to be very relevant when she's arrested for theft and fraud later today. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? I think they're about to frame you. You need to get somewhere safe, somewhere public with lots of witnesses right now. As if on cue, Jake called. Sarah, you need to run. Mom just told the men in suits that you stole Foundation documents and they need to have you arrested for embezzlement. She's claiming you've been forging signatures and stealing money, then trying to blame it on her and Michael. But we have proof. They don't care about proof right now. They're moving fast to get ahead of the story. One of the men is calling someone at the prosecutor's office. They're saying you've been unstable since Dad's death and that you've confessed to stealing money to pay for therapy and medication. I was being perfectly framed. In one brilliant move, my mother was turning my discovery of her crimes into evidence of my own guilt. Any attempt I made to expose her would now look like desperate lies from someone caught stealing. Where are you right now? Jake asked urgently. Downtown near the Foundation building. Get away from there, now. And Sarah, there's something else. I overheard Mom talking to Dr. Harrison on the phone. She's having you committed for a 72-hour psychiatric hold. She's claiming you're a danger to yourself and others. My world tilted. A psychiatric hold would not only discredit everything I said, but it would also give them time to destroy evidence and solidify their story. By the time I was released, it would be my word against an entire conspiracy backed by false medical records. I ran from the coffee shop to my car, hands shaking as I called Amanda. They're trying to have me committed. We need help and we need it now. I'm already on it. I've got contacts at the FBI white-collar crime division. Financial fraud across state lines becomes a federal matter, and your mother's charity receives federal grants, which makes this federal jurisdiction. Will they believe us? The evidence speaks for itself. But Sarah, you need to disappear for a few hours while I make these calls. Go somewhere they can't find you, and whatever you do, don't go home, don't go to work, and don't go anywhere your mother would expect you to be. I drove aimlessly through Seattle's side streets, mind racing. Where could I go that was safe? Then I remembered my father's business partner, David Kim, who had always been kind to me and had questioned some of the foundation's financial decisions after Dad's death. I called David from my car. David, this is Sarah Morrison. I need to ask you something and I need you to trust me. Sarah, I've been wondering how you've been doing. What can I help you with? Have you noticed anything unusual about the Foundation's finances since Dad passed away? There was a long pause. That's an interesting question. Why do you ask? Because I think my mother and Michael have been embezzling money, and I think Dad might have discovered it before he died. Jesus, Sarah, where are you right now? I'd rather not say over the phone. But David, I have evidence. Real evidence. Come to my office right now, park in the garage and take the private elevator directly to my floor. Don't sign in at the front desk. David's downtown office was a sanctuary of dark wood and leather that reminded me of Dad's study. When I arrived, David was waiting with another man I didn't recognize. Sarah, this is Robert Chen. Sorry, Robert Chang, my attorney. I called him the moment you hung up because I've had my own suspicions about the Foundation's finances. Robert was young but had sharp eyes that reminded me of Amanda's intense focus. Sarah, David's been asking me to investigate some irregularities he's noticed since your father's death. We've been working carefully because accusations against someone like your mother require rock-solid evidence. What kind of irregularities? David pulled out a thick file. Your father and I were partners for 25 years. I knew how he thought about money, charity, and business ethics. After he died, some of the Foundation's financial decisions didn't match his values at all. He showed me bank records that tracked major donations to the Foundation. Look at this pattern. Every quarter, there are these large consulting fees paid to companies I'd never heard of. When I asked your mother about them, she said they were for specialized fundraising services your father had contracted before his death. But you didn't believe her. Your father never used outside fundraising consultants. He believed charity overhead should be minimal so more money could go directly to helping people. These consulting fees were exactly the opposite of his philosophy. Robert leaned forward. Plus, we found something else. Your father had been asking questions about the Foundation's finances in the weeks before his death. He'd requested a complete audit of all accounts and had scheduled meetings with several board members to discuss concerns about financial oversight. Did the audit ever happen? No. Your mother canceled it immediately after the funeral, saying the family needed time to grieve before dealing with business matters. I showed them the photos Amanda and I had collected, plus Jake's recording from the previous night. David's face grew darker with each piece of evidence. This is exactly what Thomas was worried about, David said quietly. He came to me 3 weeks before he died and said he thought someone was using the Foundation to move money inappropriately. He couldn't prove it, but he was going to demand a full forensic audit. Do you think... I couldn't finish the question. Do I think your father's heart attack was natural? David exchanged glances with Robert. I think your father was under enormous stress from what he was discovering. Whether that stress contributed to his heart attack, I couldn't say. But the timing was certainly convenient for whoever was stealing from the Foundation. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. FBI taking this seriously. Agent Jennifer Walsh wants to meet with you today. Can you get to the Federal Building downtown by 3 p.m.? I showed the message to David and Robert. This is good, Robert said. Federal agents have authority local prosecutors don't have. Your mother's connections won't help her with the FBI. But what about the psychiatric hold she's trying to have me committed? David's eyes hardened. Over my dead body. You're not going anywhere near a psychiatric facility. Robert, can we get an emergency restraining order? Already working on it. We'll argue that the commitment petition is retaliatory and part of a conspiracy to silence a whistleblower. At 2:30, the four of us walked into the federal building together. Agent Jennifer Walsh was exactly what I expected from an FBI white-collar crime investigator. Professional, thorough, and completely unimpressed by Seattle's social hierarchies. Ms. Morrison, I've reviewed the preliminary evidence your journalist friend provided. This appears to be a sophisticated embezzlement scheme with multiple federal law violations. Agent Walsh spread our photos across her conference table. Wire fraud mail, fraud identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, and potentially witness intimidation. What happens now? Now we build a case that will hold up in federal court. Your mother's reputation in the community actually works against her here. The more respected she appears publicly, the more seriously federal prosecutors take charity fraud cases. Agent Walsh explained that they would execute search warrants simultaneously at the Foundation offices, my mother's home, and Michael's residence within 48 hours. They would seize all computers, financial records, and documents related to the Foundation's operations. What about my safety? They're trying to have me committed to discredit me. That stops now. Any attempt to file false psychiatric holds or make false police reports will be treated as additional federal charges for witness intimidation and obstruction of justice. As we prepared to leave, Agent Walsh handed me her business card. Ms. Morrison, what you've done here takes courage. Your mother was counting on family loyalty and social pressure to keep you quiet. Instead, you chose to protect the vulnerable people your family's charity was supposed to help. Walking out of the federal building, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: hope. For the first time since Dad's death, I wasn't fighting alone. But as David drove me to a safe house Robert had arranged, my phone rang. It was Jake, and his voice was terrified. Sarah, you need to know something. Mom just got a call that sent her into a complete meltdown. Someone told her that FBI agents were asking questions about the Foundation. She's destroying everything. She's burning papers in the fireplace, and Michael is wiping hard drives. But Sarah, she's also talking about disappearing. She said something about liquidating accounts and that they might need to start over somewhere new. The game was far from over. My mother wasn't just going to fight back, she was preparing to run. The safe house Robert had arranged was a modest apartment in Bellevue, far from Seattle's social circles where my mother held influence. For 2 days I waited while Agent Walsh and her team prepared their coordinated raids. David checked on me regularly, and Amanda continued building her story for publication. But on Thursday evening, everything fell apart. I was reviewing evidence files when David called, his voice strained and unfamiliar. Sarah, we need to meet. Tonight. There's been a development. Something in his tone made my stomach clench. What kind of development? Not over the phone. Meet me at the original coffee shop in Fremont where you met Amanda. Come alone. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived at 9 p.m. David sat in a corner booth, but he wasn't alone. Michael was with him, along with a woman I didn't recognize in an expensive business suit. My blood turned to ice. David, what's going on? Sit down, Sarah. David's voice was cold, professional. Gone was the warmth and support he'd shown for the past week. There are some things you need to understand about your situation. Michael leaned forward with a smug smile. Hello, sister. Did you really think you could outsmart our family? David, I don't understand. You said you believed me. You said you wanted to help. The woman in the suit spoke for the first time. Ms. Morrison, I'm Patricia Hoffman, attorney for the Morrison Family Trust. Mr. Kim has been working with us to resolve this situation in a way that protects everyone's interests. Working with you, David, you've been feeding them information about our investigation. David couldn't meet my eyes. Sarah, your mother approached me after your father died. She knew Thomas had shared his concerns with me before his heart attack. She offered me a very generous consulting contract to help manage the transition of his business interests. You sold me out. I helped you see reality. Your mother and Michael have been carefully managing Foundation resources to ensure maximum impact for charitable giving. The consulting fees you think are embezzlement. They're legitimate payments for services that help the Foundation operate more efficiently. Michael pulled out a tablet and showed me spreadsheets. Every payment you think is evidence of fraud has proper documentation and legitimate business purposes. The shell companies you discovered, They're tax-efficient vehicles that actually increase the amount of money available for charitable programs. That's impossible. I saw forged signatures, false documentation, Patricia Hoffman interrupted. What you saw were digital copies of documents that could easily be manipulated by someone with basic computer skills and a grievance against her family. The FBI forensic accountants your new friend Agent Walsh brought in, they found no evidence of financial impropriety. My world tilted. That's not possible, Agent Walsh said. Agent Walsh said the preliminary evidence was concerning and warranted investigation. But federal investigations are thorough, Sarah. They don't rely on emotional accusations from family members experiencing psychological distress. David finally looked at me, and I saw pity in his eyes. Sarah, your mother has been trying to help you since Thomas died. She's documented your increasing paranoia, your social isolation, your conspiracy theories about family finances. The photos you think prove fraud. Forensic analysis shows they've been digitally altered. I didn't alter anything. Not consciously, perhaps, but grief and stress can make people do things they don't remember doing. Your mother wants to get you help, not punishment. Michael leaned back smugly. The FBI investigation is being quietly closed due to lack of evidence. Agent Walsh will be contacting you tomorrow to explain that no federal crimes have been committed. Your journalist friend Amanda. She's been informed that publishing false accusations against charitable organizations could result in serious libel lawsuits. None of this is true. Jake recorded you and Mom confessing. Jake recorded a conversation about managing family finances during a difficult time. Nothing illegal was discussed. Patricia showed me a legal document. Your brother has signed an affidavit clarifying that he misunderstood what he heard and that he was influenced by your emotional distress. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Jake wouldn't do that. Jake is 20 years old and doesn't want to see his sister destroy herself with delusions, Michael said. Mom explained everything to him. The stress you've been under, how Dad's death affected you, why you've been creating these conspiracy theories to cope with loss. David slid a thick envelope across the table. Sarah, your family loves you. They want you to get help. This envelope contains information about a very good private treatment facility in California. Residential care for people dealing with grief-related psychological disorders. You want me committed. We want you healthy, Patricia corrected. The facility specializes in cases where grief manifests as paranoid ideation about family members. 6 months of treatment, full medical and psychiatric support, and when you're ready, a position in your father's business where you can contribute positively instead of creating problems. And if I refuse? Michael's smile turned cold. Then you'll face criminal charges for theft of foundation documents, harassment of board members, and filing false reports with federal agencies, plus civil litigation for defamation of Mom's reputation and interference with charitable operations. The evidence will prove I'm telling the truth. What evidence? Digital photos that forensic analysis shows were manipulated, recordings of conversations taken out of context. Accusations from someone with documented mental health issues. David shook his head sadly. Sarah, there is no evidence. There never was. I stared at the three of them, understanding finally dawning. This had been planned from the beginning. David's support, his willingness to help his introduction of Robert Chang, it was all designed to draw me out, to get me to reveal everything I knew so they could prepare countermeasures. Robert was working for you too. Robert doesn't exist, Patricia said matter-of-factly. The man you met was an actor hired to play a sympathetic attorney. His job was to gain your trust and document your accusations so we could prepare appropriate responses. The safe house, the feeling of protection, the hope that I finally had allies, it was all an elaborate trap. They had manipulated me into revealing my entire case so they could systematically destroy it. You have until tomorrow evening to decide, Michael said, standing up. Treatment facility or criminal charges, those are your options. As they prepared to leave, David turned back one final time. Sarah, I am sorry. Your father was a good man, and I did care about him. But he's gone, and the living have to protect themselves. Your mother offered me partnership opportunities worth millions. You offered me conspiracy theories and family drama. The choice wasn't difficult. Sitting alone in the empty coffee shop, I realized how completely I had been outmaneuvered. Every ally was compromised. Every piece of evidence explained away, every avenue of escape blocked. My own family had orchestrated the perfect frame-up, turning me from whistleblower into mentally unstable accuser. But as I walked to my car in the dark parking lot, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. They think they've won, but they missed something important. Meet me at Pike Place Market tomorrow at noon. Come alone and trust no one else. A friend who knew your father. Someone else was still fighting. Someone they hadn't anticipated. The war wasn't over yet. Pike Place Market was crowded with tourists and locals, the perfect place for a clandestine meeting. I arrived early, positioning myself near the famous fish-throwing vendors where I could watch for anyone following me. At exactly noon, an elderly woman approached my table. Sarah Morrison. She was probably in her 70s with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed familiar somehow. I'm Margaret Erickson. I was your father's accountant for 30 years. My heart skipped. Mrs. Erickson? Dad always spoke so highly of you. Your father was a remarkable man, and he knew exactly what was happening to the foundation before he died. Margaret sat down and immediately pulled out a thick manila envelope. He asked me to give this to you if anything ever happened to him. What do you mean if anything happened to him? Your father didn't just suspect embezzlement, Sarah. He had proof. Complete, undeniable proof that would survive any attempt at cover-up or evidence tampering. Margaret's voice dropped to a whisper, but he also knew how dangerous Elizabeth could be when cornered. She opened the envelope and showed me documents I'd never seen before. Thomas hired me to conduct a secret audit of all foundation accounts 6 months before his death. What we found was worse than simple embezzlement. It was systematic fraud involving multiple charitable organizations, fake donor receipts, and money laundering through legitimate businesses. The documents were devastating. Bank records showing a complex network of false donations that were immediately transferred back to personal accounts. Fake donor receipts claiming tax deductions for contributions that never actually benefited any charitable cause. Even evidence of bribes paid to city officials to approve non-existent community projects. This proves everything. Why didn't Dad use this? He was going to. We had a meeting scheduled for the Monday after he died. He planned to confront Elizabeth with everything and demand she turn herself in voluntarily. He hoped to minimize the family scandal by handling it privately. But he died before the meeting. Margaret's expression darkened. Sarah, your father's heart attack was not natural. The coroner's report shows traces of digitalis in his bloodstream, a drug that can trigger cardiac arrest in someone with existing heart conditions. Someone who knew about his medication and his heart problems poisoned him. The world seemed to stop. Mom murdered him. I can't prove Elizabeth administered the drug herself, but I can prove she researched digitalis poisoning extensively in the weeks before Thomas died. Her computer browsing history, her Amazon purchases, her visits to several different pharmacies, it's all documented in here. Margaret pulled out printed screenshots of my mother's internet searches, digitalis overdose symptoms, how to cause heart attack undetectably, prescription heart medication interactions, and dozens of similar queries. The night your father died, Elizabeth claimed she was at her book club, but traffic camera footage shows her car leaving and returning to your family home during the exact time window when Thomas consumed his evening medication. This is evidence of murder, not just embezzlement. Which is why everyone involved has been so desperate to discredit you. If the embezzlement comes to light, forensic investigators will inevitably examine Thomas's death more closely. Elizabeth can survive financial fraud charges with good lawyers and her social connections. She cannot survive a murder investigation. Margaret explained that she had been watching the situation develop for 3 years, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. When I heard through my law enforcement contacts that you had filed a complaint with the FBI, I knew it was time. But Agent Walsh said the investigation found no evidence of fraud. Agent Walsh never conducted a real investigation. The agent who met with you was another actor hired by your family. The real FBI doesn't even know you filed a complaint. Margaret showed me official FBI contact information. These are the agents actually responsible for financial fraud cases in Seattle. They've never heard of you or your family. The depth of the deception was staggering. Not only had they hired fake attorneys and fake FBI agents, they had created an entire false reality to convince me I was imagining everything. How is that possible? Your mother has been planning this cover-up for 3 years, ever since Thomas's death. She knew eventually someone would start asking questions, so she prepared an elaborate gaslighting operation to make any accuser look mentally unstable. Margaret handed me a second envelope. But Thomas was smarter than Elizabeth realized. He created multiple backup copies of all evidence and distributed them to several trusted contacts with instructions to reveal everything if he died unexpectedly. Who else has copies? A federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C., who specializes in charity fraud, an investigative journalist at the Washington Post, and a retired FBI agent who consults on financial crimes. Margaret smiled grimly. Your father may have trusted family, but he didn't trust family alone with something this important. She showed me her phone. I've already contacted all three. They're coordinating with actual federal authorities to execute real search warrants tomorrow morning. Your mother's fake FBI investigation bought her some time, but it's over now. What about David's betrayal and Jake signing that affidavit? David never betrayed you, Sarah. The man you met in the coffee shop wasn't David Kim. It was another actor hired to play him. The real David has been in Japan on business for the past 2 weeks. He doesn't even know what's been happening. I felt dizzy trying to process the layers of deception. And Jake? Jake never signed any affidavit. He's been desperately trying to contact you for days, but Elizabeth has been intercepting his calls and messages. Your brother is actually hiding at a friend's house because he's afraid of what your mother might do to silence him. Margaret handed me a secure phone. This has Jake's real number programmed in. Call him. When Jake answered, his relief was overwhelming. Sarah, oh my God, I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. Mom told me you'd been arrested and that I wasn't allowed to contact you. She said if I tried to help you, the family would lose everything, and I'd be charged as an accessory to your crimes. Jake, I'm okay, but we need to get you somewhere safe. Mom is going to be arrested tomorrow morning, and she might try to hurt anyone who can testify against her. There's something else, Sarah. I found more evidence. After that night when I recorded Mom and Michael, I've been secretly documenting everything. I have videos of them destroying documents, recordings of phone calls where they discuss bribing officials, and photos of Mom researching how to flee the country. Margaret took the phone. Jake, this is Margaret Erickson, your father's accountant. I'm going to send a federal agent to pick you up within the hour. You're going to be a protected witness in a murder investigation. Murder? Jake's voice cracked. They killed Dad. We believe so. And we're going to prove it. As we prepared to leave Pike Place Market, Margaret gave me one final envelope. Sarah, your father wrote you a letter before he died. He suspected he might not live to see justice done, so he wanted you to know how proud he was of your integrity and courage. My father's familiar handwriting blurred through my tears. My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, then Elizabeth has succeeded in silencing me before I could expose her crimes. I know she will try to turn you into the villain of this story to make you doubt your own sanity and perception. Do not let her. You are the strongest, most ethical person I know, and that terrifies her because she knows you will never stop fighting for what's right. The evidence in Margaret's possession will ensure justice is served, but more importantly, it will prove to the world that you were telling the truth all along. I am so proud to be your father. Love always, Dad. Walking away from Pike Place Market with Margaret and the real evidence that would finally expose the truth, I felt my father's presence like never before. He had protected me even after death, ensuring that his murderer could never escape justice. Tomorrow, the real FBI would arrest my mother and Michael. The real truth would finally come to light, and everyone who had doubted me, manipulated me, or tried to silence me would face the consequences of underestimating a daughter's love for her father and her commitment to justice. The trap they had set for me was about to become their own prison. The coordinated federal raids began at 6 a.m. on Friday morning. I watched from Margaret's car as FBI agents swarmed my childhood home, the foundation offices, and Michael's apartment simultaneously. Agent Jennifer Walsh, the real Agent Walsh, had briefed me the night before about what to expect. Financial fraud cases move slowly, but murder investigations move fast, she explained. Once we arrest your mother for poisoning your father, everything else becomes evidence in a homicide case. Juries take murdered accountants and embezzled charity money very seriously. My phone rang constantly as news of the arrests spread through Seattle's elite social circles. Former family friends, foundation board members, and society reporters all wanted my statement, but I had learned to be selective about who I trusted. The first call I answered was from the real David Kim, who had returned from Japan to find his business partner's daughter vindicated and his former friend facing murder charges. "Sarah, I cannot express how sorry I am that this happened to your family. Your father was going to tell me about his suspicions when I returned from my trip. If I had been here. David, none of this was your fault. Dad knew the risks, and he made sure the truth would come out no matter what happened to him. What can I do now? How can I help? Help me run Dad's company the way he would have wanted, with integrity, transparency, and genuine commitment to helping people." The real Jake came to Margaret's house that afternoon, thin and exhausted from weeks of hiding and fear. When I opened the door, he collapsed into my arms, sobbing. "I thought I'd lost you forever," he whispered. "Mom told me you'd been arrested for stealing from the foundation and that the family name was ruined because of your mental breakdown. She said if I helped you, I'd be charged as an accessory. You did help me, Jake. Your recordings were crucial evidence. But I doubted you sometimes. When Mom showed me fake police reports and hospital records claiming you'd been institutionalized, part of me wondered if maybe, Jake, she's a master manipulator who had 3 years to plan this gaslighting campaign. The fact that you still tried to protect me despite her lies shows exactly who you really are." That evening, Amanda Rodriguez published her investigative series in the Seattle Times. The headlines told the story: Seattle socialite charged with husband's murder. Foundation fraud scheme stole nearly $2 million from local charities, and daughter's courage exposes mother's deadly deception. Amanda had done exceptional work connecting the embezzlement to the murder and showing how the cover-up had victimized not just our family, but hundreds of vulnerable people who depended on charitable services that were never provided. "The really beautiful part," Amanda told me over dinner, "is how your mother's own arrogance destroyed her. She could have quietly disappeared with the money she'd already stolen. Instead, she created such an elaborate deception to discredit you that she left evidence trails everywhere." The trial took 8 months. Michael cooperated with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence, providing testimony about how our mother had researched Dad's heart medication and purchased digitalists through multiple sources. The forensic evidence was overwhelming: computer records, pharmacy purchases, traffic cameras, and most damning of all, her internet search history, showing detailed research into undetectable poisoning methods. Dr. Harrison, the physician, Mom had corrupted to provide false psychiatric testimony about me, lost his medical license, and faced charges for falsifying medical records. The fake FBI agent and fake attorney were arrested for fraud and conspiracy. During the trial, I learned the full scope of my mother's crimes. She had stolen over $2.3 million from 7 different charitable organizations. Homeless shelters went unfunded. Children's education programs were canceled. Food banks couldn't afford basic operations. The foundation's corruption had caused real suffering for thousands of vulnerable people. But the most chilling testimony came from the digital forensics expert who analyzed Mom's computer. She had been planning Dad's murder for months, researching his medication schedule, studying his daily routines, and calculating the precise dosage of digitalis needed to trigger fatal cardiac arrest. This wasn't a crime of passion, the prosecutor explained in closing arguments. This was premeditated, calculated murder designed to prevent Thomas Morrison from exposing his wife's theft from charities meant to help the most vulnerable members of our community. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, embezzlement, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Elizabeth Morrison was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. Michael received 12 years for his role in the embezzlement scheme, though his cooperation spared him murder charges. 6 months after the trial ended, I stood in the renovated offices of the Morrison Foundation, now under new leadership with complete financial transparency. Jake had graduated early from college and joined me in rebuilding Dad's business with strict ethical guidelines. The foundation's new board included Margaret Erickson as Chief Financial Officer, Amanda Rodriguez as Media Relations Director, and David Kim as Strategic Planning Consultant. We had recovered nearly 80% of the stolen funds and redirected them to the charitable programs they were originally intended to support. You know what the best part is, Jake said as we reviewed quarterly reports showing actual charitable impact. Dad would be so proud of what we've built from the wreckage Mom created. He knew this would happen. That's why he documented everything so carefully. He trusted us to finish what he started. My relationship with family had been completely redefined. The people who shared my DNA had betrayed me in the most fundamental ways possible. But the family I had chosen, Margaret, Amanda, David, Jake, and even Agent Walsh, who had become a close friend, had shown me that loyalty and love are actions, not just words. The foundation of trust my parents had shattered was rebuilt on something stronger: shared values, mutual respect, and genuine commitment to justice. Looking back, I realized that my mother's greatest mistake wasn't the embezzlement or even the murder. It was underestimating the power of truth and the determination of people who refused to be silenced by fear or intimidation. Dad's legacy wasn't the money he left behind or the business he built. It was the example he set of standing up for what's right even when it costs everything. That legacy lives on in every homeless shelter we fund, every child we help educate, and every vulnerable person whose life improves because we refuse to let corruption and murder go unpunished. The Morrison family name means something different now. Instead of representing social status and wealth, it represents integrity, transparency, and the unshakable belief that justice is worth fighting for, no matter how powerful the opposition. As I write this story, I'm often asked if I ever felt tempted to stay quiet, to accept the money and status that silence would have brought. The answer is simple: some things are more important than family loyalty, social acceptance, or personal comfort. Truth is one of those things. Justice is another. And the vulnerable people who depend on charitable organizations deserve better than families who steal from them to fund lavish lifestyles. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you? How do you balance family loyalty with doing the right thing? When those two things conflict, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, because these are questions every family faces at some point, even if the stakes aren't as high as murder and embezzlement. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help others find it. Subscribe for more true stories about justice, family secrets, and the courage it takes to stand up for what's right, even when everyone around you says to stay quiet. Share this with someone who needs to hear that speaking truth to power is always worth the cost, and that chosen family can be stronger than blood family when built on shared values instead of shared genetics. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and for understanding that sometimes the greatest act of love for a family is refusing to let them destroy themselves and others through crime and corruption. I hope my father's story reminds you that integrity is the most valuable inheritance anyone can leave behind, and that justice delayed is not justice denied when good people refuse to give up the fight. Until next time, remember that your voice matters, your truth matters, and standing up for what's right matters more than keeping peace with people who choose wrong over right.